Have you struggled with insomnia, and have you ever experienced being fine for a couple of months? You're even wondering if this is true recovery. And then out of nowhere, you maybe have the random thought of what if you don't sleep tonight? And that is enough to simply allow insomnia to walk itself back into your life. And in a way, it feels like you're back at square one. You're back struggling with sleep. You are gripped with fear. You don't really know what to do about it. And this is what we call a speed bump. And in today's video, I'm going to be breaking down why they typically happen and the number one and most common mistake that actually perpetuates the speed bump to begin with, so that you can identify whether or not you're doing this and actually maybe move along that speed bump a little bit quicker. Because realistically, it's a speed bump. It's not a setback, meaning that you are never back at square one. Once you have began your insomnia recovery video, and the simple fact that you are watching this video actually proves that you have a deep understanding for what insomnia is and what actually perpetuates the problem. And that truly is your power. The more you know about insomnia, the more you know about the tendencies of the human mind, you'll also start to realize that everything that's actually happening is your brain working for you, not against you. And when you understand your own mind and what's actually going on, you can also start identifying, okay, this is what I can do in order to rework with my mind, to reteach my brain that sleep is this effortless thing and wakefulness is not something to fear, in order to let go of the fear associated with not sleeping to begin with. And if you are new here, my name is Fiona. I'm a recovered chronic insomniac. And just like you, I went through a very bumpy and roller coaster ride of recovery. I used to sometimes go genuinely months where I felt like I did not think about sleep. I would quite literally effortlessly fall asleep at night. I wasn't worried about it. I was really going about my day. I truly had reclaimed the confidence that insomnia had truly stolen from me. And then out of nowhere, whether it's triggered by a flight, traveling, an important event, even just a random thought. And that's the thing, like these thoughts are purely automatic. And then just this random thought can sometimes come into my mind of like, what if I don't sleep? Or what if this comes back? Or what if true recovery isn't available for me? And that in itself would trigger speed bumps. And speed bumps are horrible. They are horrendous. And I'm not trying to discredit this experience, because if you think about it, speed bumps sometimes feel worse than your initial experience with insomnia, because it now feels like you have so much to lose, right? You finally feel like you started recovering from insomnia. You've experienced the effortlessness of sleep and this absence of fear, and then out of nowhere it comes back and it feels like, oh my goodness, you've made so much progress, and then it seems like it's all vanished into thin air. And I just want to start by saying that you cannot undo this progress, and everything that you're experiencing and that is associated with the difficulties that is a speed bump is completely valid. And just remember that this is just part of the journey, and you will also get through this. So let's get into the core that is this video. But before we get into the number one mistake that we usually make when we're in a speed bump, I do want to briefly recognize why these speed bumps happen to begin with. So yes, you maybe have this random thought and this attachment to sleep, because it is normal when your brain has identified something as a threat, either in the past or in the future. It's going to do everything possible in order to avoid that thing from threatening you again. And all it takes is a random thought and a random Tuesday for your brain to think, oh my goodness, what if this comes back? And in that process of wondering, what if this comes back, your brain does one of two things, and it basically forgets, one, that wakefulness is not a threat, and two, it forgets that sleep is effortless. Which brings us into the number one mistake. When we forget that wakefulness is not a threat and we forget that sleep is effortless, we look back at our experience, and specifically because we have finally achieved sleep and we're trying to decode what actually happened in the past in order to replicate it again. For example, you are stuck in a speed bump. Perhaps you haven't slept for 3 days, and it is the first time that this has happened after months of very good sleep. So in that moment, you're going to think to yourself, Oh my goodness. Well, the past few months I've slept really well. And it was all in root of me befriending wakefulness at the very beginning. And in order to befriend wakefulness, I would get out of bed, I would journal, I would read my book, I would knit or watch Netflix, whatever it may be. So I'm going to do that again. I'm going to do all of the things that once worked in order to overcome this speed bump. But this is the tricky thing. When you did it back then, you weren't doing it out of the effort of making sleep happen. You were doing it because you had no other choice. You had finally realized that sleep cannot be controlled because you had already spent months, maybe even years, or maybe days, who knows, everybody has a different journey, but you had spent a very long time trying to control sleep and nothing had worked. So you had got into a period where maybe you had finally learned about the cycle of insomnia and thought, okay, well, I can't control sleep. I'm going to reframe the dialogue and take back control over my time and do this thing that we call befriending wakefulness. But befriending wakefulness isn't an act. It is a situation, or it is all about allowing. How do you simply show to your brain that sleep cannot be controlled? Hence, you are going to use that time to do something else. Because what is better, tossing and turning and making yourself sleep at night, or trying to make yourself sleep, or using that time to do something that you genuinely enjoy in order to reclaim and change the dialogue that is that situation? And that's why speed bumps can sometimes feel so tricky and as if you are stuck, not just in square one, but it sometimes feels like you're going crazy because what once worked no longer works now. And that's because so often, and this is the number one mistake, when you're going through a speed bump, you forget that the things that you were once doing were not sleep efforts, and now they are. And they are now because you are looking back at your previous experience and you're thinking to yourself, well, when I couldn't sleep before, I used to read my book, or I used to journal, or I used to watch Netflix. So I'm going to do those things. But now when you're doing it, the intention is different, because the intention is, how do I overcome the speed bump? How do I replicate having fixed my insomnia in the past in the present moment? When most importantly, it always comes back to the same lesson, which is sleep cannot be controlled and wakefulness is not something you need to avoid. We all experience wakefulness at times. I personally have had so much going on in my life at the moment, and it is wonderful, and I am so grateful for all the opportunities, but my brain is very active at night, and I can't control it. I think most importantly, this journey is teaching you that sleep is not this perfect thing, and it is not this perfect thing that you can control. So if you do feel like you are stuck in a speed bump, if you feel like insomnia has come back into your life and you're stuck trying to fix the problem, you need to remember that the reason why you felt finally were able to sleep in the first place, like when you first maybe started coming out of this insomnia loophole, was because you reduced the fight. You stepped away from the boxing ring that is the fight with insomnia and the fight with sleep, and you decided that you were not going to take part in this battle. And in doing so, you reclaimed your time, which is what insomnia is asking you to do again right now. So if you are struggling with insomnia and you are in a speed bump, the number one thing you need to remember is, are you doing things out of the effort of making sleep happen? And then I would question you, why do you feel like you think that you need to do something to make sleep happen? Because sleep is completely effortless. And if you think that you're doing things that once worked out of the effort of making them work now, they're probably not working because you're putting too much effort on them yielding a specific result. So the solution is, how do you reclaim your night? Are you asking yourself the question, am I doing this in order to make sleep happen? Or am I doing it because I genuinely enjoy it and I'm simply reclaiming the narrative that is wakefulness for me right now? And you'll also start to realize that the more you just keep befriending wakefulness, meaning how can you genuinely on a moment-to-moment basis just befriend those feelings, befriend that situation, you'll also realize that the speed bumps come and go a lot faster, because usually what keeps us in the speed bump is trying to fight against the speed bump and trying to fix it and avoid it in the first place. Anyway, I hope that wasn't too much of a ramble, and I hope that this in some way supports you if you are currently struggling with a speed bump. If you have any other questions regarding insomnia, recovery, insomnia, sleep, you can go ahead and also drop those in the comment section below, and I'll either get back to you personally or maybe even cover them in a future video. And if you're watching this and thinking, oh my goodness, I actually don't really know what the cycle of insomnia actually is, I've also linked my 5 days to better sleep in insomnia recovery series, and it's 5 days packed with so much knowledge and also the tools and really the information that you need to truly start understanding the cycle of insomnia so that you can reclaim the power and the dialogue that is your own life and your own sleep.